I wanted to start with a quote from Chris. She said, Martha has served 5 different presidents. She says it seems we always have the president we need at the time. When we needed more visibility, that was Judith Content with her gallery connections. And when we needed to be more tech savvy, that was Lisa Chibitine. And when we needed an endowment fund, that was Sandra. Now we need to pull it all together, and that is me. So I want them to start by we're going to do 2 questions, but the first one is, what was the biggest challenge each of you faced? I mean, look at, you've got an organization run by artists, for artists. What could possibly go wrong? So let's start with you, Yvonne. Biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge was finding board members who would stay. When a board member retired, it was painful for me because it meant trying to find somebody else who would be dedicated. And I'd give my little speech about, geez, I've written through, 4 books while I was president. You can do anything. And you go to the person who does everything because they make the best board member. And then the second hardest thing, as I mentioned earlier, was finding the perfect executive director, the perfect fit for us. And when you find that, it's a blessing. And I think we should all celebrate the fact that Martha's willing to stay another 25 years.
Well, you stole my most difficult part because we actually found Martha. I was one of the interviewers of Martha. We had several wonderful executive directors, one of which passed away, and another one was very ill. So we were losing members because there was no one organizing the group. And so we did go quite a search to find Martha, and I was really happy to get her. And then at that point, to get the membership back up. And I think that was my position as being a recognizable name in both the quilt world and the art quilt world. So I kind of could swing both ways on that and bring a lot of people into the fold. So my job was pretty much to get the membership and also the website. And thanks to a generous donation from Maureen Hendricks, we got our website up, which is integral to the whole organization. So thank you to Maureen for that.
The largest challenge for me on a personal note was that I needed to find my voice. I was literally paralyzed on conference calls. I literally could not say a word. And I just learned yesterday that when Martha thought of all the members of the board, when I was on it, that had the potential to be the president, I was last on the list. Not that I'm upset about that. So it wasn't until they asked me to chair the exhibition committee, and I actually had an agenda, and I could read from the agenda and actually kind of coordinate some parts of the meeting, that I found my voice. So I credit SAQA with actually allowing me to mature in my field a great deal. And the other biggest challenge to me on a professional note with SAQA was that it was at that time when I took over the presidency and on the board, it was a very isolated organization in terms of its visibility in the art world, and I felt that it deserved more recognition, more acknowledgement, more understanding, and that's the challenge that I gave myself. And wherever I traveled, I would take our journals, our catalogs for exhibitions, and I made presentations to museum directors and gallery owners and artists themselves all across the country. And it's something you would do for an organization that you love. It's not something you do for yourself. But from San Diego to New Hampshire and Portland and all over the country, I gave our materials, and I think it helped. And those people maybe didn't join the board, but they became our jurors and editors and writers and appreciators and some collectors. And those were my 2 big challenges.
Thanks, Judith. Well, as I just mentioned before, my most difficult challenge was taking the job a year early, because I always like to find out exactly what's going on with anything that I'm sort of in charge of doing.
And so the result of that is I didn't have the preparation, and so I had to hold back for about 4 months, being bossy and learning as much as I could about what the reps did, what other board members were interested in. And that sort of stewing period, I think in the end was productive, but it was difficult for me to do that. The other difficulty was at that time, we were having some problems with technology, with the webinars and the GoToMeeting system, and I remember a couple of meetings I literally hit my head down against the table because like, where do they go? Well, I don't know. But eventually that got worked out, and I think now everything's working very fine as far as I know. Yeah.
I'm still so new at this that my biggest challenge was trying to figure out what I was going to wear to the conference.
I think she did okay.
But the major challenge I see ahead is to, recognize the bull in the china shop. We have grown so quickly, so exponentially, internationally. We now have to sit down and look at every aspect of the organization and say, this is working great, but we're also going to have to say, we're going to have to do something here. And I'm going to have the courage to say, you know what, this has to change. We recognize it, and that's going to be my biggest challenge. I mean, I can hear you mumbling back there, she could tell us what to do, but it isn't very easy in the boardroom to be decisive like that. So that's going to be my biggest challenge, so please help me. Thanks.
Meg, can I add something?
Yes, please do.
One of the things I mentioned earlier was that I tried to document the history of the publications that were important to the development of the art quilt. But the other thing was, we only had 4 reps. And that was a real challenge because it would be Oregon, Nevada, Washington, Utah, Montana, and Colorado. Yeah, so it was really difficult to establish that and also to do everything else we wanted to do. So I think that looking back on it, and as the overview, these regional reps are so important and such a force. The bottom line was we want to sell our work, we want to expose our work, we want to have galleries accept us. And so the regions we've divided and conquered, which I think is amazing.
Great. So now we're going to move on. Biggest triumph. You want to start, Yvonne, or should we start at this end?
I'll start. With all humility, I would like to say that being on the top of the heap is pretty cool. But I also recognize my shortcomings, and I think that looking at what's happened this week and what we did in 1995 is very similar, but I think that you guys are on the right path, and I thank from the bottom of my heart those people who step forward. Volunteerism is a gift to the rest of the world, and every time I ever taught, first thing I would say to the person that picked me up was thank you for volunteering, because if it weren't for the volunteers, we would not have an organization. So I think that you should all pat yourselves on the back, and I think that we all grow by volunteering to help others, and I think that's probably one of our greatest triumphs. Help, Martha.
Martha's your greatest achievement.
Yeah. Martha was my greatest achievement, and it was really awesome to find her, and I worked really hard to make sure she got paid appropriately, and I'll just use Martha, thank you, Marie. You know, to keep her happy so that she could keep us happy. And one other thing that we did in my tenure was to work on PAM membership, which is now called JAM membership. But professional artist member, juried artist member, I assume that's what that means. And so that it wasn't to keep the organization looking professional on the website, which Maureen helped us get up and looking rather professional in itself, in that you couldn't just pay to be a professional member, so that the work that was on the site was good work. And not that those that paid to be on it were doing bad work, but just to be more, to have more work and more achievements under your belt to be considered a PAM. You had to have so many shows or book written, or so we made a whole list of things that helped to determine who was the PAMs.
Boy, when I took over after Katie, I think that was my biggest achievement. She's pretty big footprints to fill. And so I survived that. And I guess what I realized when I first started as president and even as vice president, because I was the first vice president, was that there was a lot of people that were feeling burned out in the organization. A lot of the volunteers, as you mentioned, and especially the regional reps, had been doing it a long time, and they were tired. And I don't feel that a lot of people felt that they were as appreciated as they should be and deserved to be. And one of the things I started doing right off the bat was inviting SAQA members to my studio, providing them with the materials to play with, and we made tokens of thanks for the volunteers. And the very first time I met, and regional reps especially, but the very first time I met Martha was at the conference in Athens, Ohio, in conjunction with Quilt National. And I walked in with these two great big shopping bags filled with spools of embellished thread as necklaces. And they're all wrapped, so they're all incognito, and I passed them out to all the reps, and every single rep told me that they got the one they wanted. And they were as different as day and night. And I'm sure some of the artists like Susan Else, and I forget who's in the room, helped me, but it's a tradition I continued as long as I was on the board. And I think there were about 3 or 4 different embellished items, and if you're lucky, maybe I'll start it up again.
Well, as a footnote to Judith, I was afraid I was going to have to make all those little presents. but no. I know you all are going to say, oh no, here comes the endowment fund again. Well, that's not what I want to talk about. A few years ago, I found out that all of the SAQA archives were stored in a warehouse in Modesto, California, and that Yvonne was in charge of this. And many years ago, I was trained as a professional archivist, and I started thinking, no, we have to do something. And so the board worked on this, and we got the International Quilt Study Center to agree to be our archival repository with inventorying as soon as it comes in so people can begin to research the material. And I had a glorious 2 days out in Modesto with Yvonne when she was in the middle of chemo, I want to say. And if anybody can be fun in the middle of that, that's a fun person. And I still remember opening boxes going, oh my, look at this. And Yvonne would say, stop reading and keep packing. and I just think that was the greatest achievement, getting those archives up there. Yeah.
This is so not fun being brand spanking new, because all I could think is my biggest triumph was I scored that orange jacket. But I did get the crown, and I'm saying to say something. But I did hold my very first board meeting, and I already have the triumph of having every board member coming up to me wanting to know what else they could do for SAQA. What more could I ask for?
I want to come back to a remark that Katie made during my conversation with her, and something that she thinks is very important. And she said, if you are going to be an artist, act like an artist. So I would love for each of you to tell me what that means to you. Do you want to start, Katie?
No, I'll start. I'm the mother. My mantra was, if you go to the grocery store and get a box, empty box, banana box, and fold up your quilt and send it to a show, you're not an artist. You have to treat it like art. So it was, the education part of SAQA when I started was, if you want to be an artist, act like an artist. Don't go, you know, in a pair of yoga pants to a gallery. Dress like an artist. Wear cowboy boots. Something that distinguishes you. But that whole thing about people used to fold it up like a towel, put it in a box and ship it off. I shipped a piece to Poland. It cost me $2,500 to ship that piece. But I wanted it to go in a 112-inch crate. And I called Miriam Shapiro and I said, my God, it cost me $2,500 to ship that quilt. And she said, so you won't buy a fur coat this year?
One of the things I noticed when I was juror for Quilt National is that you can't enter a piece there that's been shown. Everyone knows that. It means shown in any shape or form on any media. But it's also, you can't enter a piece that was started in a workshop. This is difficult for me to say because I teach workshops. That's how I make my living. But if you start a piece in a workshop, you cannot enter it in Quilt National. There's not a painter that's taken a class that would ever even think of entering a painting they started in someone else's workshop into a painting exhibition. So that's the kind of thing, you know, consider the art considerations, consider composition, consider everything as an artist would about your piece, and act like an artist.
I don't think there's a minute of the day that I don't act like an artist. I wake up in the morning and I look at the colors of my house, which are pretty much like the fuchsia and the turquoise, and the work is on the wall, and I collect other art, and I walk into my studio and I feel my blood pressure go down, and I go into a state of reverence, and then I emerge when the buzzer rings on my stove, because that either means that I need to take my mother to the hospital or I had a board meeting. I don't know. I just love color, and I had this experience in southern France going to a canyon where iron oxide had been quarried, and it had been washed by the water, and it was every shade of crimson, vermilion, cadmium that you can imagine. And I walked in there and I looked around and I said to my husband, welcome to my brain.
If you're going to be an artist, act like an artist.
Okay, I forgot the question. Okay. To me, it means that every day you do something that is making or doing or experiencing art. Whether it's going to a museum or carving a radish, which I've actually learned how to do, or going outside and saying, oh, I like that tree, I'll take a picture of that tree. That's it for the day, I have too much to do. But have that in the front of your mind every single day. I don't mean Monday through Friday. Every single day you wake up. Make, do, or consider art. If it's not your art, somebody else's art. And that just keeps you on the right track.
It just seems to me that it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I somehow think, well, how can I turn that into a piece of art? That's it. And, I can be watching the news and I'm going, ooh, we got to work that. Or, walking down the hallway, oh, did you see? It just doesn't matter. Just, the toothpaste tube. Suddenly some inspiration comes. And that's, to me, what it is to act like an artist and dress good. Or well, I should say.
So there's some cost of success. And here's this organization 25 years later, international. You've gone from 800 members 10 years ago to 3,300 and change. And so has SAQA become the establishment? And if so, how do you keep the edge?
I hope it's become establishment. Because we want, one thing we did do, and that was to make the term recognizable, so that you would no longer have to explain what Studio Art Quilt. Now the reason we're Studio Art Quilt Associates is very important to understand those 4 words. Martha Cannell said, you're a studio artist, you work in a studio, whether it's you move the microwave and put it on the toilet and you have a place to work. You have a spot to work, whether it's 40 by 40 or small. So we're studio, we're artists, so we're proselytizing that we know who we are, and we make quilts. Now that's the stumbling block, which we've had for years. Should we say we're fiber artists? Should we say we're this, we're that? But when we wrote the first description of Studio Art Quilt Associates, we said it should follow the principles of art, line, form, composition, etc. So that's why we maintain the word quilt, even though on the web it's South African Quilt Association. And we're associates because our lawyers said we were associates. We're not an association. And the reason we're associates is because we were structured so we would always have a quorum available for our board meetings, and that all the voting would be done by the board. And the membership, the associates, are members of the association, but they're associates, so they're part. You're not separate from the board, you're part of it, but it defines whether or not you can vote on things. Well, you can sure talk about it and yell about it on the internet, but the voting is done through the board. So that's why we're Studio Art Quilt Associates.
I think that one of the main purposes of SAQA is to help up-and-coming artists know where to go, how to get on the path that they're wanting to be, with the exhibition opportunities, with the information in the newsletter, and the support from the regional groups. I think everybody's just helping everybody, and I really appreciate that in the organization.
And I'm looking at SAQA more as not so much as an organization, but an organization of individual artists, and that's all of you. And I don't feel that we could call ourselves the establishment without defining each and every one of you and what you all do. And so I welcome you to think about your artwork as long as it's expressing your heart and your soul, your desire, your day-to-day life, the experiences that you're going through, good, bad, indifferent, everything. You are SAQA, and what you're doing expresses us. But what SAQA does for you is allow you to exhibit your work and publish your work, be out there in the world. So we're you. So make us proud. You do. I've watched this work improve so much in the years that I've been involved with this organization. A new level of sophistication of color, composition, design, meaning, and expression. So congratulations, and I just say keep up the good work, because you're us.
Well, I think SAQA is maybe twofold. In the quilt world, we are the establishment and very much respected, and we should be. You should be proud to be part of all that. In the art world, we're mavericks out there on the far edge, falling off the end of the earth. And that is not such a bad place to be, because it gives us ambition, it gives us drive, it makes us a little bit angry, and it keeps us alive.
Well, I do have a background in German, and Thomas Mann once said that once you finish the house and you complete the house that you are building, the family dies. And so for me, if we stop and say we're established, we will die. So we need to keep going forward. Everything is going forward.
Okay, so I would love for each of you to say what are, we've talked a lot about the organization, but what are 2 things personally that SAQA has done for you?
You always like to start, Yvonne.
2 things that SAQA has done for me. 2 things SAQA has done for me. There's too many things that SAQA has done for me. How's that? It's amazing to see, like Judith said, the development of technique. I remember when people first started hand dyeing their fabric, and now as artists we're incorporating so many techniques. Now I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm saying that there should be a limit in everything, but I think the fact that we have stretched, and we've stretched others in the contemporary, traditional, classic quilt genre who look at our work. It's all basically art, but I think that the fact that we are experimenting, which is, Miriam Shapiro once said, she did a lecture, and it was men artists of the 70s versus what women were doing. And men were being honored and with lots of money because they were doing simple things. When you saw it visually, the women were taking a giant leap, really doing amazing things, like using a dollhouse, for instance, as an art statement. And so I think that that's what SAQA has meant for me as an artist, that I'm a nurse by training. I was an operating room nurse. I learned to cut and sew in the operating room. So I think being able to say that you're an artist, it's because we're all artists together, right? And writers and wonderful, wonderful people. So I think that's what it's done for me. You want a second thing? It's given me a big bladder, because by gosh, I have to go.
What SAQA's done for me. SAQA made me grow up.
Yes.
I had to get on my knees to beg her to be president. Literally. Katie never liked a roommate, and so we were sharing a bathroom, which was a big deal. And we had our 2 bedrooms. We were in Flagstaff, Arizona. And I kept saying to her, "You got to be president. You got to be president. My God, I got to find somebody." And so, no, she was my first choice, but she wouldn't commit. And I said, I literally got down on my knees next to her bed, and I said, "Katie, you have to do this." She said, "I can't." And I said, "You will grow beyond measure. You will not believe what this will do for you." And she was. She would force her students to belong to SAQA. She'd say, "Yes, you must belong to SAQA." So, and she really did. Now she does these retreats, and she's a famous artist, and so, but it was that making that leap of faith and saying, "My dear, you are my best friend."
Yeah. I'd be the president of this organization? What? And so, after the knee thing, I had to say yes, but I really did grow, and thanks to Vaughn, when I was having troubles, I could call her and vent a little bit, and she would say, "This too shall pass." And I really did grow up. Became responsible for my actions and for running an organization and helping everyone else step up to the plate. And Yeah, so in the end, I really thank Yvonne for talking me into being the president. But I didn't really realize that till this very second, so.
Boy, what did SAQA give me? First of all, the ability to work in small, chopped up pieces of time. Because I would love to walk into my studio and have the luxury of an entire day in which to dye and piece and quilt. But once you're on the board, you've got board meetings and you've got calls and all kinds of things. So I would get I learned to be organized. I would get very organized for each meeting, have my materials right by the telephone, and that would be done. Then I would put the timer on the telephone, on the stove, and I would just go into my work. Then the stove would start buzzing, and I'd get on the phone, and then I would do it again. And to this day, that is a really good skill to have.
Well, I think the two most important things, and my husband would certainly attest to one of them, is being president really helped me develop patience. The patience to let other people come up with ideas, and that's trickled down into my personal life quite a bit, and I hope I can continue that attitude. The other thing is that as president, I started offering to travel and give critique workshops to our members in various places. And I know that you all can enjoy that, but you can't imagine what it's done for me. Every single time I do that, I steal one of your ideas. You didn't know that, did you? That's the truth.
Well, Deb would say that I've learned to become more diplomatic. And that really has served me well. But I can tell you the main thing, and this is, you remember the Gilligan's Island crying thing. SAQA has brought me the best colleagues and the best friends. Sorry.
I did when I was talking before about being a different kind of quilter and not considering myself an art quilter. I just want to throw out that in terms of the things that SAQA gives people, the second quilt I ever made was the Quilts, quilt, sample quilt where, all the drunken path and all the, basic things. And I started out making extremely traditional quilts. And I am working on, I was telling Martha this at breakfast, I would not have had the courage or even the thought to do what I'm doing now, which is when I turned 60, I got about 75 people to send me something that was very special to them, either a piece of fabric or a bling of some sort that I could make into a quilt. So I am making a quilt out of bits of t-shirts, baby hats, wedding tablecloths, wedding gowns, and beading, and one perfect tiny white kid glove from somebody's recently deceased 95-year-old mother. So that's what I would say, again, is that you inspire so many people who don't step up and say, I am an art quilter, but you let us think that there's another thing we could be doing, and that's very enriching, and that's a very big thing that goes well beyond this organization. So I have one more, and then if there's any time left, we can open it up for questions. So I'm going to say it's the year 2039, 25 years into the future, and you are Googling SAQA. What headlines would you like to see there?
Here lies Yvonne, she got it all done and on time.
I don't know, famous quilts sells for $1 million, and they're waiting in line to buy more.
SAQA at 50 at the Met.
Come see the Blockbuster Quilt Show at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City.
She stole my line.
What about you guys? What would you like to see in 25 years? So any comments or questions? We can bring a mic out there, or you just want to shout? I don't know. Comments, questions?
Don't be embarrassed.
Thank you. Thank you for setting the bar so high. All of you.
I forgot to say one thing. Could I just add a little footnote? When I got that phone call from the board about, oh, hello, a year early, would you be president? I had one question and one question only, and you could guess what it was. Martha, are you going to be there for the next 3 years? Thank you, Martha. Thank you so much.
Okay, I just want to say that as I put my crown on, I have every president in here for the next 2 years.
Behave yourself.
And we do still have one pair of sunglasses. We finally found her. Come up and get them, Meg. Come on down. Price is right. It is my pleasure to introduce Meg Cox as our moderator for this panel. Meg Cox is currently the president of the board of the Quilt Alliance. And part of the Quilt Alliance's mission is to document everything that has to do with quilts. And part of what they do is a series called Go Tell It at the Quilt Show. And if you noticed, when we were at Radical Elements yesterday, Emma, stand up, Emma. Emma was videotaping 3-minute segments by each of the 10 artists who were able to join us, having them talk about their work, and those will get posted on YouTube, and you'll all be able to hear the artists talk about their work. They also do longer interviews called Quilters Save Our Stories. They also are the sponsors for the Quilt Index, which is a wonderful database of hundreds and thousands of quilts that is online and that is accessible to everyone who wants to learn about quilts. Meg also, has a small background as a journalist for the Wall Street Journal. She writes for Quilt Life magazine. She writes for Quilt Shop, Fabric Shop News. Every time I open a magazine, Meg is telling me something interesting about quilts that I didn't know before. She also has her own e-newsletter, which is one of the few that I actually read, as opposed to delete. She is just a wonderful proponent for quilts, for all aspects of quilts, including art quilts. And when I realized, okay, this is our 25th anniversary, we need to do something special. We need to see if we can get our presidents to talk about SAQA. I thought the perfect person to be able to get them to really tell you fascinating facts would be Meg Cox. And she graciously agreed that she would come and moderate this panel. And they're going to start out with quilts. Thank you, Meg.
Thank you so much, Martha. I really feel it's a privilege for me as a president of another quilting nonprofit to get a chance to celebrate the presidents of this truly outstanding organization. I come to you in a position I would describe as envy, because of the vision and growth and creativity and importance of SAQA. It's just an amazing organization. And it's personal for me, because I am one of the thousands and thousands of quilters and people who have been really touched and affected by Yvonne Porcella. Because I don't know if everybody knows this, but she was one of the founding directors of the Quilt Alliance. And I was fortunate enough when I came on the board to, that she was still there. And she was a mentor, and she was inspiring and funny, great stories all the time. And she literally talked me down off the ledge when the founder left, and things were very much up in the air. And Yvonne was the first person I called, and she said, it can be rocky, but you should stay. And I've been the president since 2009, so she gives good advice. So it is also personal in that I am a proud member of SAQA, and just re-up for 2 years. I am never going to be a Pam. I barely know the difference between a Shiva paint stick and a crayon. But the strength of this organization, I think, is that I am somebody who is passionate about all kinds of quilts. I want to learn and see and be inspired by and be educated by and sometimes acquire quilts that are absolutely nothing like the quilts that I make myself. And this organization has been all those things for me. And I love the auction. I have quilts by some leading lights of this organization that I see while I'm sitting at my desk every day, and it's a treat to look up and see Susan Schei's Obama quilt and other things. It's just a very big treat. So I think that's a huge part of the vision of this organization, of knowing that an art quilt organization should not be just a tiny little tribe talking to each other. And the growth of this organization and this wonderful anniversary is a testament to the power of that and the wiseness of that. So to get on with it, as Martha was explaining, we're going to do this in 2 parts. We're going to start by having the presidents, and I sort of pre-interviewed all of them, including Lisa Chiptine, who is not able to be here, but she's here in spirit, and I did get comments from her. So all my questions and everything that we're doing is based on their sense of what was important. So we're going to start, as is essential, with quilts, and we're going to be doing these Go Tell It at the Quilt Show interviews with each of them. I've asked each of them to bring a quilt to talk about that will in some way tie into her tenure and comment on it in some way. And so we're going to do this chronologically. We're going to start with Yvonne, and this is all being videotaped. These will later be available to everybody, but so there's going to be a little bit of a lag changing between.